There are 10 brain hacks I need to tell you about today, and I want to be honest with you right up front. A few of these genuinely made me uncomfortable. Not because they don't work, because they work too well. One of them literally changes how fast time moves for you. Another one can erase a fear you've carried your entire life in a single afternoon. And the last one on this list is so aggressive that it essentially tricks your own brain into becoming a completely different person. Now, I'm not saying that to be dramatic. I'm saying it because every single one of these is backed by real neuroscience, and several of them come with side effects that nobody talks about. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to walk you through all 10, explain exactly how each one works inside your brain, give you the step-by-step so you can actually use them, and then because I think you deserve the full picture, I'm going to tell you the dark side. The part that most productivity channels leave out. Let's get into it. All right, let's start with the 2 hacks that are going to solve the most universal problem on this list, the inability to just start. And I want to reframe something for you before we dive in, because this matters. You are not lazy. I know it feels that way. I know you've got 14 tabs open and a to-do list that makes you want to crawl back into bed. But what's actually happening is something neurological, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Hack number 1 is called the 5-minute specificity rule. Here's the science. When you look at a large, vague task like write the report or start the business plan, your amygdala, the threat detection center of your brain, flags that task as dangerous. Not metaphorically dangerous. Your brain processes it with the same machinery it uses for physical threats. And what does your brain do with threats? It avoids them. That's not procrastination. That's a survival response misfiring. So here's the hack. Instead of thinking about the whole project, you ask yourself one hyper-specific question. What exactly will happen in the next 5 minutes if I start this right now? Not I'll work on the report. That's too vague. Instead, I will open Google Docs, type a title, and write 1 sentence. That's it. The reason this works is that your amygdala cannot sustain a threat response to something that's specific and that's small. 5 minutes, 1 sentence. There's nothing to be afraid of. You're essentially slipping past your own security system. And what happens almost every time is that once you start, momentum takes over. The hard part was never the work. The hard part was the startup cost, and you just reduced it to almost 0. Now, hack number 2 pairs perfectly with this, and it's called the 90-second focus interval. This one is for people whose problem isn't starting, it's staying. You sit down to work and within 3 minutes your hand is reaching for your phone like it has its own brain. Sound familiar? Here's what you do. Set a timer for 90 seconds. Not 5 minutes, not 25 minutes like those Pomodoro people tell you. 90 seconds. During those 90 seconds, you do nothing but the task. Complete, total focus. When the timer goes off, you give yourself a 10-second break where you can do literally anything. Glance at your phone, stretch, blink at the ceiling, whatever you want. Then you go again. 90 seconds on, 10 seconds off. The reason this works is almost stupidly simple. Your brain stops fighting the work because it knows a break is guaranteed and it's coming soon. There's no psychological resistance to 90 seconds of anything. And here's the beautiful part. Over several weeks, you gradually increase that window. 90 seconds becomes 3 minutes. 3 becomes 5. 5 becomes 10, and before you know it, you're doing 6-hour deep work sessions that would have been unthinkable before. I've seen people use this exact method to learn chess, pick up coding and acquire skills in a fraction of the time it normally takes. It works because it respects how your brain actually operates instead of trying to brute force willpower. But here's the thing. What if your focus problem isn't really about focus at all? What if the issue is that your body chemistry is literally working against you? Because the next 2 hacks change that at the physical level. Hack number 3 is what I call the neurochemical performance spike, and it's the closest thing to a legal performance-enhancing drug I've ever found. Here's the protocol. Right before any mental task, studying, writing, problem-solving, anything that requires your brain to perform, you do 50 jumping jacks. Immediately after, you splash cold water on your face for 30 seconds. That's it. 50 jumping jacks, 30 seconds of cold water. Takes less than 2 minutes. Now let me tell you what's happening inside your body when you do this. The jumping jacks spike your heart rate and trigger your sympathetic nervous system. That's your fight or flight system. Then the cold water on your face activates something called the mammalian dive reflex, which sends a cascade of neurochemicals flooding into your brain. We're talking about dopamine, norepinephrine, and acetylcholine, the exact cocktail your brain needs for laser focus and high information retention. It's like flipping a switch. People who use this protocol consistently report being able to learn the basics of a new language in days, not months. And the reason nobody talks about it is because it sounds too simple. 50 jumping jacks and some cold water? Come on. But the neuroscience is solid. You're manually triggering the same chemical state that your brain enters during a life or death situation, except you're pointing that energy at a spreadsheet or a textbook instead of a predator. Hack number 4 is habit association, and it's based on a principle I call neural piggybacking. Most people think habits are built through repetition. Do the thing for 21 days and it becomes automatic. That's incomplete. The real mechanism is association. Your brain builds new neural pathways most efficiently when they're wired to existing automatic behaviors. So here's the hack. Take the new habit you want to build and physically place it in the path of an old habit you already do without thinking. Want to start working out in the morning? Put your gym clothes directly in front of the bathroom door, not next to it, not near it, in front of it, so that when you walk to brush your teeth, something you've done automatically for decades, you literally have to step over or pick up those clothes. You cannot ignore the cue. What you're doing is piggybacking the new behavior onto a neural pathway that's been reinforced for 30 years. And because the existing pathway is so strong, the new habit gets pulled along with it. People who do this correctly report that a new habit can feel automatic in as little as 48 hours. Not 21 days, 48 hours. The key is making the cue physically unavoidable and linking it to a behavior that's already on autopilot. Now, those first 4 hacks are powerful, but they're relatively safe. They change what you do. The next 2 are different. They change what you feel. And that's where things start to get interesting and, honestly, a little bit dangerous. Hack number 5 is called fear-excitement relabeling, and it's built on a fact that might genuinely surprise you. The neurochemistry of fear and the neurochemistry of excitement are identical. I don't mean similar, I mean identical. Adrenaline, cortisol, norepinephrine, the exact same chemicals flood your body whether you're terrified or thrilled. The only, and I mean only, difference between fear and excitement is the label your conscious mind puts on those chemicals. That's it. It's the same soup, different name tag. So here's the protocol. And I want you to take this seriously because it's more powerful than it sounds. The next time you're in a high-stakes situation, a job interview, a confrontation, a presentation, anything that makes your palms sweat, do this. Take 10 deep, fast breaths, not calm, meditative breaths, aggressive breaths. You're deliberately amplifying the stress response, not calming it. Then, out loud, say this 3 times. This is excitement. This is fuel. This is power. Say it like you mean it. What you're doing is intercepting your brain's interpretation of those chemicals before it can label them as fear. You're manually overwriting the tag, and the result is transformative. That anxiety you felt, it doesn't disappear, it converts. It becomes rocket fuel. People who use this consistently report a massive increase in risk tolerance. They can stand their ground in confrontations that would have made them freeze before. They take action in moments where they previously would have folded. The fear is still there chemically, but it's wearing a different costume now, and that changes everything. Hack number 6 is the more extreme version of this, and I'm calling it exposure therapy on steroids. The principle is straightforward but uncomfortable. Fear is your brain's prediction of a catastrophe, not the catastrophe itself, the prediction. Your brain says, if you do this, something terrible will happen, and you believe it, so you avoid it. The hack is to deliberately go experience the catastrophe. I know how that sounds, but hear me out. If your fear is public speaking, you intentionally go bomb a speech. Not try your best and hope it goes well. You go in expecting to fail. If your fear is rejection, you go get rejected on purpose. You ask for things you know the answer will be no. If your fear is confrontation, you have the difficult conversation you've been avoiding. You deliberately walk into the thing your brain is screaming at you to avoid. And here's what happens. You survive. You bomb the speech, and you don't die. You get rejected, and the world doesn't end. Your brain predicted a catastrophe. The catastrophe either didn't happen or was far less painful than predicted, and now your brain is forced to update its threat assessment. The fear dissolves. Not gradually, it dissolves, because fear cannot survive contact with evidence. But here's the danger, and I need to be honest about it. Not all fears are irrational. Some fears are keeping you safe. The fear of walking into traffic, the fear of provoking someone violent, the fear of taking a genuinely reckless financial risk. Those fears exist for good reasons. So before you go full exposure therapy on something, ask yourself, is this fear protecting me from something real, or is it protecting me from something imaginary? If the danger is imaginary, attack the fear. If the danger is real, respect it. That distinction matters. All right, the next two hacks go even deeper. We're not talking about changing what you do or what you feel anymore. We're talking about changing who you are. And I'm not being hyperbolic. Hack number 7 is subconscious reprogramming, and it takes advantage of a window that opens in your brain every single night. The principle is this: right before you fall asleep, your brain transitions from a beta wave state, which is your normal waking consciousness, into a theta wave state, which is essentially the doorway to your subconscious. During this window, your subconscious mind is dramatically more receptive to new information. It's like the firewall goes down for a few minutes. The hack is simple but specific. Every night, right before you close your eyes, and I mean right before, this is the last thing you do, you handwrite a specific identity statement 10 times. Not type it, handwrite it. The physical act of writing engages different neural pathways than typing and makes the imprint deeper. The statement should be written as if it's already true. Not "I want to be confident," instead "I am someone who people are naturally drawn to," or "I am disciplined and I follow through on what I commit to." You write it 10 times, then you go to sleep. You do this for 7 consecutive nights. Now, I want to be transparent. The peer-reviewed evidence for this specific protocol is limited, but the underlying principle that the subconscious is more suggestible during the hypnagogic state before sleep is well documented. And anecdotally, people who've done this consistently report that long-standing personality traits, things like social anxiety, victim mentality, chronic self-doubt, begin to shift noticeably within that 7-day window. You're essentially installing new code directly into your operating system while the antivirus is asleep. Hack number 8 is the most aggressive identity hack on this list, and I call it identity gaslighting because that's exactly what it is. Every morning, before you do anything else, you ask yourself one question: what would I do today if I were already the person I'm trying to become? Not what should I work toward? Not what's the next step in my journey? No, what would I do if I were already there? And then, and this is the critical part, you do those things immediately. No build-up, no ease into it phase, no "I'll start small." You behave as if the transformation has already happened. Here's why this is so powerful and honestly a little unsettling. When your actions don't match your identity, your brain experiences cognitive dissonance. It's deeply uncomfortable. Your brain has 2 options to resolve that discomfort. Option 1, admit that your actions are delusional and stop. Option 2, update your identity to match your actions. And here's the fascinating part. Your brain almost always chooses option 2. It is easier for your brain to change who you believe you are than to admit that what you're doing doesn't make sense. So when you wake up and eat clean, train hard, do deep work, speak with confidence and carry yourself like the person you want to be, your brain starts to believe that's who you actually are. You're gaslighting yourself into a new identity, and the results people report are dramatic. Rapid shifts in discipline, confidence, and even physical appearance, because your behavior changes so quickly that your body follows. Remember at the beginning of this video when I said one of these hacks literally changes how fast time moves for you? We're here, and I genuinely debated whether to include the last 2 because they're the most experimental and they carry the clearest risks. Hack number 9 is real-time narration, and it's inspired by something that happens during traumatic events. When your brain perceives a life-threatening situation, it cranks up its sampling rate of reality. It processes more information per second, which is why people who've been in car accidents or combat situations report that time seemed to slow down. Their brain wasn't actually slowing time. It was taking in so much more data per second that it created the subjective experience of slow motion. This hack lets you trigger that state manually, without the trauma. For 10 minutes, you narrate every single thing you're doing out loud, in real time. And I mean everything. I'm picking up this fork. The metal is cold. I'm scooping rice. I can feel the weight of it. The texture is slightly sticky. I'm putting it in my mouth. I notice the grain against my tongue. It sounds insane. I know it does. But what you're doing is forcing your brain to process reality at a much higher resolution than normal. You're manually overriding your brain's tendency to automate and ignore most sensory input. The result is a heightened state of presence that people describe as reality becoming richer. Colors seem more vivid, sounds become more distinct, and most importantly, you start catching things that other people miss. A micro-expression during a negotiation, a slight shift in someone's tone that tells you they're lying, a defensive gesture they don't realize they're making. But here is the danger. And it's real. When you start processing reality at a fundamentally different resolution than the people around you, it can be isolating. You'll see things that are obvious to you but invisible to everyone else. You'll catch lies that other people swallow whole. And over time, that gap between your perception and everyone else's can breed frustration, impatience, and in some cases, a genuine loss of empathy. You start seeing other people as if they're running outdated software. That's a dark road, and I want you to be aware of it before you go down it. Hack number 10 is strategic sleep deprivation, and this one comes with the biggest asterisk on the list. The protocol is this: 2 nights a week, you deliberately sleep only 4 hours. You use those extended wake periods for shallow tasks, emails, cleaning, administrative work, anything that doesn't require peak cognitive performance. The other 5 nights, you sleep 8 to 9 hours, and you reserve those well-rested days exclusively for deep work, problem-solving, creating, learning, strategizing. The idea is that instead of getting a mediocre 7 hours every night and performing at a consistent medium level, you concentrate your peak performance into specific days where your brain is fully rested and firing on all cylinders. I have to be direct with you. This one is genuinely risky. There is limited long-term data on the effects of deliberate bimodal sleep patterns, and the short-term data on sleep deprivation is clear. It impairs immune function, emotional regulation, and cognitive performance on those short sleep days. You are, in a very real sense, borrowing energy from your future self. Whether that trade-off is worth it depends on your situation, your health, and your honesty with yourself about whether you're optimizing or just punishing your body. I'd recommend talking to a doctor before experimenting with this one. I'm including it because it exists and because people are using it, but I am not endorsing it as safe. And that brings me to something I think is important enough to close this video on. There's a dark side to all of this that nobody talks about, and you deserve to hear it. The dark side and closing. When you start using hacks like these, when you learn to override your fear response, rewrite your identity, and perceive reality at a higher resolution than the people around you, something shifts. And it's not entirely positive. The sources I drew from for this video all mention the same recurring warning. When you get good at manipulating your own psychology, you start seeing everyone else's psychology too. You start to see people as running code. You notice their automatic responses, their predictable emotional patterns, the stories they tell themselves. And that can erode your empathy. It can make you feel isolated, like you're operating on a different frequency. The line between your real self and the self you've engineered starts to blur, and you might not always like what's on the other side of that blur. So use these tools. They work. Several of them can genuinely change your life in measurable ways within days or weeks. But use them with self-awareness. Check in with yourself regularly. Ask whether the person you're becoming is someone you actually want to be, not just someone who's more productive, more fearless, and more optimized, but someone who's still connected to the people around him. Because the most dangerous brain hack of all isn't on this list. It's forgetting that being human was never a bug. It was the whole point.